Good morning, all of you casters, and welcome into the very first market watch of the Caster's Corner YouTube channel. So I got the message super early this morning that the Elestrals TCGPlayer listings have gone live for purchasing. With that said, I wanted to take you through the first ever market watch for Elestrals. As far as I'm aware, I don't think anybody's made one yet because I woke up at the butt crack of dawn to make this before I go to work. So I'm going to go ahead and knock this out and give you guys some of the things to look out for when you are going and purchasing these cards on TCGPlayer, which if you are purchasing these cards on TCGPlayer, be sure to use the affiliate link that is in the description below, and that'll go ahead and that'll help support all of us here at Caster's Corner to keep making all of these. It's right here on the TCGPlayer homepage. You have Elestrals available for purchase. So let's go ahead and dive on in. I'm here on the, if you just click on Elestrals, it'll take you to all cards. I have it sorted A to Z. And this is the first thing that I want to highlight. There's a lot of cards that do not have very many listings. And by that, I mean there are no cards that have a lot of listings. And there's a critical shortage really on a lot of staples, like, for example, Gorgon's Gaze right here. Gorgon's Gaze, there's only one listing for a not full art, and it's the Shattered Stars Hollow at $9, which I think is actually kind of a steal. And all of the commons, there are 0 listings available. If you have a Gorgon's Gaze, maybe you're somebody that's bought multiples of every starter deck, and so you end up having 8 or 10 or 12 lying around, and you can list them on TCGPlayer. Be sure to list them on TCGPlayer rather than having them just sit around your house, because we're at a point now where with broad market appeal through TCGPlayer, a lot more people can get into this game, but they can only get into the game if the cards are available. So that's why I wanted to highlight something here like Gorgon's Gaze, where yes, it is on TCGPlayer, but we need people to come in and list all of their spare copies. And if you have a locals that has a lot of Elestrals cards in stock, make sure that you let them know that it's live on TCGPlayer and that they can go ahead and start listing their singles on TCGPlayer. I also wanted to highlight here, the Gorgon's Gaze full art is less than $80. I think that's too cheap. It's a perfect moment to scroll down here and look at our first divine, Hephaestus. Hephaestus full art, you see it here at $95. That's pretty much the going rate for any full art divine. I've got Aeolus and Demeter pulled up here, but Apollo's the same way, around 80 to 100. Poseidon, Zeus, they're all in that 80 to 100 range. And Hephaestus is no different. And if you want to go with the statue versions of these, Aeolus, for example, is $9. If I'm not mistaken, they're all about $9. I think one person went in and listed a bunch of all of the statues at $9. So if you want to upgrade from the regular versions of these to the statue, you can get it for $9. And also the statue versions are actually available, whereas yes, Demeter has a 1 or 2 listings, one listing for a Demeter that is not full art or statue. Aeolus has none. This is a product of all of the starter decks are not created equal, and so as such, we've only had one wind, earth, and fire starter deck so far. So when you have starter decks only releasing every 3 months with a set drop, it makes it to where they can't necessarily put every divine rune in every starter deck. And so as such, a lot of these starter decks get these divines that don't get reprinted for maybe a year. So be sure, if you are looking for divines, to go ahead and scoop those. And again, if you're somebody that's bought a boatload of starter decks, please go on and list a lot of these divines and PTAs and things of that sort. Next card I wanted to highlight was Dense Fog. So Dense Fog is one of the best counter rune staples in the game, and I think that this is a really fair price listing here for the rare at only $2.99 from Daybreak. Now, you can get the hollow from Shattered Stars. I think those are in the like $8 range, $5 range. So if you want to upgrade to the hollow, it's worth doing, but a good staple to grab here at the $3 mark. Another staple I wanted to highlight is Altar of Stars. Altar of Stars is my favorite counter rune in the game. I think it is one of the most versatile cards you can play alongside Dense Fog. And this counter rune, Altar of Stars, Organized Play Series 1, it's only $3. If you want an even cheaper version, you can find the Pharaoh Geist starter deck version, which is the original art, for only $2. Now, if you do want to upgrade to a foil copy, you can find the base set first edition printing for $10. Be aware, these early holos, like base set first edition, if there's base set Kickstarter edition available, I would recommend going that route, because the base set first edition, and this goes for all holos for base set and Frostfall, they do have that foiling problem where they kind of Pringle. Let's see if I have one handy. Like, this is what you're going to get out of like a Frostfall holo. And this has been sitting in a tight deck box for a month. So these cards do Pringle very badly. But if you go to base set Kickstarter edition or everything Daybreak and after, you don't have that issue. It's just in base set 1 and Frostfall. But be aware, there's some Pringling with these holos, but they're still worth having. If you like keep them in a binder, you won't have any issues. If you make sure to keep your deck in a very tight deck box, it might be okay. So, and here's another listing for $1.99 from the Chronodile starter. Let's talk about Ambrosia. Ambrosia is the best card in the game. No qualifiers needed. I think that if you can snag your copies for $1.49 here while they're still here, it's definitely worth trying to grab them now. Past this, there's not that many listings despite how many printings it has. There's really not that many listings available of Ambrosia. As you can see, this is another one of those cards that suffers. Despite having all these printings, with it being a staple, there's just not that many people that are willing to move off of their copies. So if this is a card that you have a lot of spare copies of, please consider listing them. All right, Archilith. Dude, Archilith at $9 is kind of crazy. This card doesn't have other printings outside of here. This is, in my opinion, a huge steal. So if you do want to play Thunder, go ahead and snag your Archiliths at $9, because there are actually a handful of listings here at $9. All right, Astrabbit. Outside of Ambrosia, this one is also maybe the best card in the game. This is the Organized Play Series 1 of Astrabbit. There is one listing available, $9. What I'm going to tell you is, if you have the Organized Play Astrabbits, I actually recommend you list them, just because $9 is a very high market price for a card like this. I think that this card should be valued closer to like $5. But if you have them and you can get $7 or $8 for them, it might be worth going ahead and listing those copies. If nothing else, it's worth listing the copies regardless, because people need them. As such, you have the Imperial starter deck Astrabbit. So this is the original starter deck print of Astrabbit. It was also in base set 1, which obviously we have that here. It is worth noting, this starter deck version and this base set version are exactly the same. It's just that one's $1 cheaper. They're both uncommons. It's just that one says SD04 and one says BS1. So neither one's a holo. They're both just the same card. So if you're going to grab it, I recommend the $1.99 version. If you want to build a matching set of an Imperial starter deck, I guess you could do this, but I don't see a reason to. But again, if you do have these tournament pack copies, I would list them expeditiously. Next card I want to highlight here is Boombat. Boombat at 50 cents from base set first edition, I think is kind of a steal. This card has become a side deck staple in the game, and as such, I think that he is definitely worth grabbing. The tournament pack copies are $6. Again, I would sell those if you have them. But there is a couple of listings here. There's, old Bean Soldier. Wonder who that could be. Bean Soldier has a dozen copies here listed, and that is definitely worth going ahead and grabbing and checking out. The next card I want to highlight here is Poison Tipped Arrow. I know it doesn't look like there's much to highlight, but that's because there's not a single listing of Poison Tipped Arrow. Another card that has suffered from, it's only really been printed in starter decks except for the full art and one Shattered Stars printing, but it has no listings available. If you have spare copies of PTA, please consider listing them. People need these. Next card I want to highlight is Tsunami. Tsunami is a card that does have a few listings here and there, $1.99, $2. and there are not even any of these shattered, or there's one Shattered Stars one listed. This is another card that's a super duper staple. If you have spare copies of these to spare, if you have copies of these that you can let go of, there's 11 listed here. So if you need your copies, get them at $1 a piece. That's super duper fair. But this is definitely a card that is worth going ahead and grabbing copies of. All right, next card to highlight here is Earthquake. Earthquake is another one of those meta staples. It's a one of in the game. It's limited, but it is definitely worth grabbing your copies of. $1.25 over here for base set Kickstarter, which is even better. Definitely worth grabbing at $1.25. Base set first edition's $1.50 though. Also, it's basically the same card, just the quality on Kickstarter is a little bit higher, but it's still the same card. So absolutely worth, this card's definitely worth $1.50. Next card to highlight here is Lavalilith. Lavalilith is a card that doesn't have a ton of listings, but it is a one-of staple that is worth grabbing if you want to play a fire-centric strategy. I don't really recommend it in many other strategies outside of fire, but definitely go ahead and grab your copies now. I think 15 is a really fair number, especially with the card being limited where you're only going to need one of it. All right, the next card I want to highlight here is Shield of Achilles. This is another one of those staples. You're going to put it in every deck mostly, and you got base set Kickstarter for $3, base set first edition for $2, and the Imperial starter for $1. All worth going ahead and grabbing if you need them. I will say, I know I keep harping on it, but it cannot be said enough. We need more listings. So if you are a person that has opened a bananas amount of Elestrals and you have a ton of extra copies of all of these cards, please list them on TCGPlayer. There is a very low quantity of a lot of these cards, and people really want to play this game, and this is the biggest hurdle for people to play this game, is to go ahead and get these cards from TCGPlayer. And if people are opening a bananas amount of product and then not listing them on TCGPlayer, it makes it harder for people to get into this game. And if you want those cards to be worth something, then you need people to get into the game. So please go ahead and consider listing your copies if you have copies to list. And until next time, happy casting.